Alright, how y'all doing? My name is Donovan, and for my honors project, I'm going to be talking about unintentional blindness in driving and how cognitive load blocks what we see. So basically, I'm talking about inattention blindness today in driving, and specifically, um, just like how we just miss like apparent information that's just right in front of us, and we just miss it some way, somehow. And just, I'm basically just going to be going into focus and attention and stuff like that. Because I personally, before I was like kind of looking into this kind of thing, I thought it had to do with just like my driving habits or just other people's driving habits or just like kind of like fatigue, which does have a play, but just like just like in a more general sense of just being like lazy. But no, it really just has to do with just like our biology, just our like generalized attention and its mechanism and how it works and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, mechanisms of attention failure, multitasking, fatigue, and cognitive load. Like I was saying before, attention is pretty interesting in the sense that we can really be looking at something, but we're not necessarily processing what we're seeing because for our brains, there is a bombardment of information, and and our brain has to it honestly knows it has limitations. It knows its own limitations. It knows that we cannot perceive and pay attention to everything to the same exact high detail. So it's a ratio. We will put more of our attention or more of our focus onto what we think is the most relevant. And a little bit further down the line, I'll get into the anonymity effect, but basically, really quickly, the intimate effect is where we as humans have a higher chance of finding animate objects to be the most relevant versus inanimate objects to be not as relevant. And I'll get more into that later. But that's basically just kind of me like adding commentary on attention being this kind of filter. And yeah, so like I was saying, we just there's what we think is most important. Our brain will kind of narrow its focus onto that. So like let's say that we're driving and we notice that there's a lot of cars now. So now our attention is mainly gonna be focused around the cars, not what's going around us inside the car or maybe a call or maybe a song that we're playing. That'd be like a quick example because like when we're driving, it's a high load situation, or also as we would call high perceptual load. There's a lot for our brain to process and to help our brain not get or how our brain helps itself by not overloading itself is by, like I was saying before, just delegating what is the most important information to focus on. Because there's, again, as we know, there's some small distracting objects that can distract us. And then, like a quick example of this is the famous gorilla. I think so, the invisible gorilla, where basically, like we as observers, we were told to focus on a specific team, black or white team, and count how many passes that they did. And it's crazy because when I first experienced this, I I never experienced a gorilla. When they asked me, so did you notice the gorilla? I was like, you're joking. Like you just got to be edited or something. But no, literally, gorilla walks straight through the center of them passing the ball around. The gorilla stops in the center, does a little dance like see at the top right, and then continues walking through. And it's just so crazy because we were so focused on counting the passes, we missed the most apparent piece of information that would just be so shocking if we weren't told that task in the beginning to focus on how many passes there were. So again, imagine this in a more stationary, I mean, it's still dynamic, we're still moving, but just not as fast environment. And compare that to driving, where we're on the interstate going 60, 50, 70 miles per hour, sometimes 80, some of us sometimes. Anyway, it's it's a lot of information that we're processing. And especially when we're driving, we're doing it at a much faster rate, and our room for error starts to diminish as well as the severity of the consequences can rise depending on the environment. Like let's say you're just in the road, not in the road, you're in the city versus on the interstate. You could hit a pedestrian. You can be going driving your neighborhood or like residential neighborhood and you're distracted. You could accidentally hit a kid randomly running out into the street. Or you can miss the ball that might happen first because of the anonymity effect. and you miss the ball. And then you see the kid, and then boom, it's too late. All because of unintentional blindness and how that leads to accidents, and how these attention failures lead to accidents. So kind of like I was saying a little bit earlier, there's types of attention failures, or the three main types I found were distracted driving, inattention, and cognitive overload. And kind of just basically what I was already saying, cognitive overload is where there's a lot going on. Let's just say like for example, for me, like coming into Atlanta, and there's just it goes from smooth, fast moving traffic to a lot of cars, and my attention, my it just gets overloaded. I'm like, there's so many cars, there's so many. Sometimes I don't even use blinkers, and it's just I'm gonna have to look back at navigation, back at the road, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just do not want to miss my exit. I don't want to accidentally cut someone off, or there's just a lot. Same when it comes to inattention. Let's say like you're texting while driving, you shouldn't be doing that. Say and yeah, you're just like focus on the driving environment. You're just focusing on other things, which happens. There's also distracted driving, where kind of similar to inattention, where your attention is diverted from the primary task of driving. And kind of like I was saying before, a lot of this is anyway is internal and external distractions. So internal could be just your thoughts. Me, I am a daydreamer while I drive. I am focused on the road, but I'm not focused on the road. I am thinking about everything else, kind of but the road. Don't tell anybody, any of my friends. But anyway, motion, stress, and fatigue. Fatigue is mainly like drowsiness kind of thing, like you're sleepy. External distractions could be mobile devices, your passengers, billboards. Who looks at billboards? But loud noises as well. And then mainly the whole point of the slide is that it just significantly impairs your driving ability, and mistakes could be more likely to happen. Kind of similar and kind of referencing back to what I was talking about earlier about the anonymity effect. Basically, what the first peer-reviewed I don't think it's a journal, but just I would call it a journal that I went into was basically looking at the anonymity effect, and basically what they found, you see on the right side, they were basically had people driving, and they kind of they didn't throw out objects, but they just had objects that the drivers were just having to pass by, and they noticed that the drivers were more likely to notice animate objects versus inanimate objects. Whether you see right, yeah. And imagine this while you're driving. This could be like a bike. This could be a ball coming out. This could be the crazy situations, a tire, you know, these kind of things, and kind of a little bit more getting into, you know, animate objects for us are processed as more relevant, so we're more likely to know some versus like per se a bike. Or I don't know if you guys have ever had anyone who's got a motorcycle and we're all like, no, don't get a motorcycle. And it's not just because of the dangerous. I don't know the right words. I would say the safety mechanisms. Because if you get in a car accident in a car, you have airbags with a bike. You hope for the best. But it's not just that, but it's also again the attention of other drivers. Some drivers can be paying attention genuinely, but because it is not what is common, our brain might not just process it. So when we go check our mirror, we might miss you on your bike, even if you're not even driving recklessly. Same goes to people who ride bicycles, and you might say you're in their respective bike lane, and we might go make a turn, or we might be doing whatever we might be doing. Yeah, we're looking, but I mean, yeah, your 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 mobile device is not as fast, but it's also just not something that our brain automatically has a high priority to. So we're just more likely to miss it, which again, this unintentional blindness leads to more accidents. As well as what I was saying earlier, technology, texting, calling, and stuff like that just kind of takes you away from focusing on the road. And honestly, calling was one of those that really caught me off guard. I thought because I was paying attention and because I'm thinking I'm paying attention because I'm looking at the road while talking to someone else was completely fine. But actually, no, it also impairs your driving because your brain processes are focusing on all the parts that are related to communication. And because of that, you have less focus solely on the road, so your reaction time is reduced. And it gets even worse as you age because younger drivers have a better, or basically in this study, I just really summarized it, but younger drivers had a faster reaction time to the new stimuli or new surprises to their environment. They adapted a lot faster, as well as they had better strategic redistribution of their attention versus older adults who had a slower reaction times, and it kind of when the surprise happened, it was just that's literally how it was. But it's basically just saying that age reflects flexibility and not just basically just basic perception, as I thought. And this is an example. Hope this never happens anyway, but this kind of has to do with reaction time. And again, these are just kind of what I was saying earlier, just real world examples of how unintentional blindness leads to accidents, texting while driving, drowsy driving, and intentional blindness. They just have devastating consequences because of attention failures, which sucks, but it happens. These are the statistics basically saying that, again, like I was said in the very beginning, I thought that people driving recklessly were, I mean, kind of unintentional blindness is reckless driving, or texting on phone is reckless driving. But I thought it was people just driving excessively fast or cutting up, or like that's what I thought was the leading cause of accidents. But no, it actually has to do with attention failures and stuff that I was talking about before, like driving home late after work and really tired. I thought they were just really rare, unfortunate accidents. Which, again, segueing into safety, I think legislation is doing a solid job, but I think they could be doing a better job in marketing effective campaigns better. Of course, in Georgia, we always have that seatbelt law, which I think they do a great job on. Um, but again, I think they could be implementing the their campaigns into our what we use on the daily, and let's say like it's TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, those kind of things. I think they just do a better job of marketing those ads there. I think that could be a lot more helpful, as well as incorporating it into the youth programs and stuff like that. But anyway, I've gone long enough over this. Basically, the key points is that attention failures significantly contribute to car accidents, but luckily for us that they're predictable because of we know that one, driving amplifies the risks that come with unintentional blindness, and that we have limitations, and that because our brain is has to analyze and process all this information in front of us, it gets saturated, and new surprises that the brain is not expecting might get missed. So we understand that that is a predictable cognitive limitation, so that we as drivers need to understand that alone and what things will take our attention away from driving so that we can reduce accidents from happening. And again, I think policymakers need to nuance and make their laws and campaigns a little bit more effective. Here's my work cited, and thank you. That's all I have.